Welcome back to The World Over. It seems like the sexual harassment scandals in the U.S. escalate every minute. Some allegations appear to be proven, while others remain just that, allegations. What is this story doing to an already brittle and toxic culture? Here with her unique perspective on all of this, I'm joined by former America's top model contestant, modesty advocate, and author of the new book, The Other Side of Beauty, Leah Darrow. She joins us from St. Louis. Thank you for being here, Leah.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I want to start with what we're seeing out there in these allegations, and it is a tsunami at this point. It's not isolated to any one industry. It touches fashion, it touches film, it touches media. It seems to be touching everything. And, well, maybe that's the problem, isn't it? But do you feel vindicated at this point? You've been talking about modesty for a long time.
I know that.
Right, absolutely. I mean, when I was working as a model in New York prior to my conversion, this was something that I was a part of. This was something that happened to me personally. I saw it happen to other models as well, with clear sexual harassment cases. And so, yeah, I am happy that at least the media is talking about it now, because it's been going on for so long. And many of us have definitely been affected. And it's definitely not just in that industry, but it seems to be more allowed there. And I think especially as a model, I was working in an industry that was objectifying the human person, and especially the female body. And so there was a sense that we allowed a piece of it to happen because we just saw it happen everywhere, and then nothing was done about it. And nobody wanted to say about it because, of course, your career could end like that.
Yeah. Well, it happened in the theater as well. I was in the theater for years, and as a young actor, whether you were a male or a female, if you didn't look like a toad, somebody was going to hit on you. It happens. The question is, how far did this go, and how far has it been allowed to go? You know, when you have these people in power, using that power and control over young people, then that's mostly what we're talking about, or people they have control over in the office. It seems to be epidemic, the way that it was utilized, that the power was utilized. I want to share with you something that actress Angela Lansbury, now in her 90s, said, and she got into a lot of trouble for saying this earlier in the week in an interview. She said, "We have to own up to the fact that women, since time immemorial, have gone out of their way to make themselves attractive. And unfortunately, it has backfired on us. And this is where we are today. We must sometimes take blame, women. I really do think that. Although it's awful to say, we can't make ourselves look as attractive as possible without being knocked down and raped." So my question is this. I worry about that idea that somehow, you know, it's one thing if you're advertising all your wares, and I won't explain that, we're a family show. It's quite another if you're just trying to look beautiful and the best you can be. What's the difference? How do you balance that out?
Well, I think the difference is obviously our intention. And it goes back a lot to some of the problems that we're seeing today. I know a lot of people, maybe some, liberal feminist group, want to say that it's just the men. All the men are the problem, but that's not the case. We have a problem, and we have a problem with a lack of moral clarity, a lack of formation, character formation, and women realizing and being told that they're strong, that they're brave, that they're beautiful for who they are and not what they look like. And this is a message that is not being given loudly enough in our culture. And definitely the Hollywood and beauty and fashion industries don't want us to believe that, because they want us to believe that we are exactly what they want us to be and what they're trying to create in us. And that's a problem.
Well, in your book, The Other Side of Beauty, you talk about this commoditization, of beauty, that it's become its own product. It's a ware that is sold, and that takes a certain amount of control. Tell me what happened to you, what you saw when you were on America's Top Model, happening with the photographers. I remember seeing this a lot with directors and producers around certain productions.
Yes, absolutely. So it was extremely common, photographers on the set of the show, and even after the cycle ended, the photographers would reach out to the former contestants and have them on to their set to get pictures for their portfolio so they could continue in the modeling industry. And then these occasions happen, and then there was these moments where they would get there, the shoot would be done, and they'd be like, well, why don't we do a few more other shots where you have less clothes on or no clothes at all? And so that began a process, and I began hearing stories of my former contestants of this happening to them with photographers there from the show. And this happens, and nobody seems to be talking about it. And I will say at the time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say when I had my friend come back and tell me these experiences. I didn't know what to do myself as a model working in the industry after being on America's Next Top Model when I myself was groped and harassed. And you're just not sure where to go. And if you say anything, who do you really tell? It's not like there's a CEO of the modeling industry that you go and you report it all to, if that would even help.
Yeah. You ended up calling your dad, right?
I did. I did what any girl could do. I was in the middle of a fashion photo shoot, and I had a profound encounter, Raymond, with Christ. It was something that only Christ could do. And he touched my heart in the middle of a fashion photo shoot in the middle of New York City and just reminded me of who I was, that I was his and I wasn't the world's and I did not belong to the world. And that gave me the courage to walk out. And then I went home and I did what any girl would do. I called my dad and I just said, Dad, if you don't come and get me, I'm going to lose my soul. And there's a long pause, but Dad finally spoke and he just said, okay, baby, I'm coming to get you. And he came, he drove 2,000 miles to come pick me up. And I made my way back home to St. Louis, and I came back to the Catholic Church, came back to my faith, and began that spiritual rehabilitation process of really finding out what God had in store for me, how much He loved me, and to find out really His purpose for my life.
I want to share something with you. This is the actress Mayim Bialik, and she writes this, or wrote this on Twitter back in October. I still make choices as a 41-year-old actress, and I think of them as self-protecting and wise. I've decided my sexual self is best reserved for private situations. I dress modestly, and I don't act flirtatiously with men as a policy. She later had to apologize for those comments. What kind of culture are we in where you have to apologize for something like that?
It's terrible. There's a huge backlash where we have to say, we want to speak truth, and we hear these allegations that are coming out, and everybody's in a big uproar. And it kills me that these allegations are coming up from all these different men that are coming on, and there's this idea of like now all men are bad, which is not true at all. But at the same time, they're still touting this whole everybody can do whatever they want, and now gender's a question and everything else. So this idea of like, ladies, all men are bad, but you have to share a bathroom with them. That mentality doesn't work, and it just shows us that our society is very confused. And I think what she said in her Twitter post about modesty is incredibly important. And I think it's important for women of faith to not apologize for suggesting ideas and virtues such as modesty and chastity are ways to help combat this issue that we're currently in.
We're clearly in a bipolar moment, and I think for men, it's very difficult to navigate this because you want to be close to your coworkers, whether they're male or female. You want to be kind to them. But now there's this chilling effect you feel, certainly in workplaces, and I think in other industries, I see it, where men particularly don't know quite what to do because the culture is sending you a mixed message. The culture itself is bipolar. On the one hand, we're pushing 12-year-olds out there in these, scanty outfits with come-hither looks on billboards in Times Square. On the other hand, we're saying you can't say honey to a woman or hold a door. So you really don't know quite how this works. And my question is, what impact does it ultimately have on relationships between men and women and on dating, reaching out to people you find attractive? That is the beginning of a relationship and the continuation of any species, let's face it. What effect is it having, do you think, on young girls and boys beginning what used to be called, old-fashioned, I guess, courtship?
Right. Well, I think one of the problems is that if we keep going on like this and we don't interject some common sense and faith into these issues, we're going to become this very asexual culture where we're going to be frozen, and I can't reach out and engage with any person on an appropriate level because of what might be said or what an accusation might be had. And that's something that we have to fight against. And I think that people of faith really do have an answer. I mean, Paul VI wrote about this in Humanae Vitae, that these are the logical consequences of the sexual sexual revolution that's happened a long time ago. And when you take things such as prostitution and pornography and taking, marriage and separating that out between children and family, there's a problem. And what we've done is that we've made it all transactional, and we've made the procreative act transactional. And you separated that out, and these are the problems that we have. Yeah. And I think we need to have more moral clarity. I think we need to look to faith. I know Mike Pence and his stance of never being alone with a woman in a room. That's got to be a good start, at least for that. I'm sure he's aware of the current, situation in culture that's been going on for years. Yeah. And I'm sure it's also out of respect to his wife and to his marriage. So there's a lot going on here, but I don't think saying nothing is not going to help. Doing nothing won't help. And I think we need to look to our faith and common sense to approach what's going on.
Mike Pence was pilloried for saying those things, derided as a Puritan. Now he's looking like the smartest man in the world, I mean, frankly. Let's talk very quickly about your book, The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and Truth, and True Worth, rather. What is the message you're trying to convey? And I imagine you really want to reach younger women and girls who are just beginning to see themselves and the beauty God's given them.
Absolutely. There is a message out there in the world that's been there for a long time that tells us women that we are what we look like, and that we have to live a life that's Instagram worthy, and we have to live a life that, of course, the culture has deemed beautiful and acceptable. And that's something that I want to get women to to turn their back on, and to look really at what Christ has in store for us, that his plan for us is better than what anything culture can offer us. And the other side of beauty is a life that's lived in holiness and wholeness. It's a life that doesn't turn our back to the world and hide from it, but embraces the good in the world and also looks to Christ as a person who will lead us to everlasting beauty and truth.
Yeah, all of these images, everything we've been reading about, when you step back and look at it, you have to say, these are people searching for and starved for intimacy and true love and relationships. I mean, the desperate acts of some of these guys that you see, it's the first thing that sort of leaps out at me, and you see it a lot in areas where people have fame, notoriety, money, power. It's the next level for them, and they don't have those intimate bonds and ties of home and family, and even a sense of self that will allow them to be whole people. So they act out, they do these crazy things, and one hopes that this is the beginning of reining some of that in, and maybe an opening for people like you to offer something different. The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and True Worth by Leah Darrow is available at bookstores everywhere and online. Thank you for being here.